Welcome back to The Sitting Duck, a Town of Duck podcast. My name is Kay Nickens, and I am the Public Information and Events Director for the Town of Duck. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by two special guests, Jeff Schwartzenburg and Lee Nettles from the Outer Banks Visitors Bureau. In this episode, we're diving into the heart of tourism on our barrier islands by exploring the mission and the impact of the Outer Banks Visitors Bureau. I'll let Jeff and Lee introduce themselves in just a moment, and we will get to hear how the Visitors Bureau champions Dare County, supporting local businesses, enhancing visitor experiences, and preserving the unique character of our coastal communities. So, thank you both very much for being here today.
Thanks, Kay.
Yeah, thank you.
Great to join you.
Yeah, and I should retract that statement. I say being here, but I got to come over to your turf today. I got to travel, so this is exciting. If you guys want to start off just by introducing yourselves and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do for the Visitors Bureau, and maybe something that you love about the Outer Banks.
How long do you have? This is Lee Nettles. I'm the Executive Director of the Outer Banks Visitors Bureau. I've been in this role for about 15 and a half years, and it's an incredible place, as we all know. You never stop learning about it. In fact, it's one of the things that I enjoy the most is you never stop learning and just kind of picking up on new things and quirks and characters, and it's just a real rich tapestry here.
Yeah, and I'm Jeff Schwartzenburg. I'm the Community Engagement Manager here at the Bureau. I've been here a little less than I've been here about 2 years and love my job. I help to oversee our long-range tourism management plan as well as serve as a liaison between the Bureau and a lot of our community stakeholders, everything from municipalities to nonprofits, residents, business owners. Absolutely love what I do. Started out as a visitor, like many people did, but love calling this place home. We've called it home now for 11 years, and it's a great way of life, and love our lifestyle here.
Going off of what you said with that, that leads me to, I guess, a first question to kind of dive into the aspect of tourism. What drew you to the Outer Banks? You said you're not from here, so what drew you here?
Yeah, my wife actually grew up vacationing here, and her parents retired here probably about 13, 14 years ago. And just from visiting and spending time here, we knew that at some point we'd like to get here. We kind of sped that up a little bit from what we thought we'd either retire here or settle here at some point. And in 2014, we made the jump, and don't look back for a second. We absolutely love it here.
Ironically, that's also when I made that jump in 2014. So good year for big changes. And what about you, Lee? What drew you to the Outer Banks?
Well, I moved with the job, but we've been vacationing here forever. My in-laws have a place in Nags Head, and so we've been visiting with our kids for several years before the job opportunity came about. And we knew that since the kids were real familiar with the area, that the move would be they'd have an easy time adjusting, and it came to pass. It's been great.
I find it very interesting that so many people have a very similar story about moving to the Outer Banks and then subsequently getting so involved with stewardship and giving back. And it sounds like you both kind of found that niche when you got here too. So when you think about the Outer Banks and your stewardship, how does that translate into your role with the Visitors Bureau? I know that's a very, very open-ended question that we will get deeper into, but just to kind of scratch the surface a little bit, what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I think for me, just spending time here and enjoying the natural beauty that it has, you have to realize that unless we take care of the place, it's not going to be like that forever. So we have to do what we can to protect and preserve what makes the place special. I think whether you're a visitor or a resident, everyone has that responsibility to do that. So I think people, whether you live here as a resident or you visit, this place has a calling, and it calls you, and it's got it's kind of a deeper vibe within your soul, kind of catches you, which is why I think a lot of people do to start out visit and then say, gosh, I'd love to see myself there permanently. I think that connection, whatever it is, it's the natural beauty, it's the people. I think it something inspires you to want to take care of it, and that perfectly aligns with what we're trying to do on the tourism side of things.
That's very beautifully stated, and it's true. Do you also agree that you find that people have that inspiration drawn, from the natural environment? And what do you see from your role as far as being involved with the Outer Banks and stewardship?
It's interesting because the Visitors Bureau, our industry has traditionally been about demand generation and marketing, promoting, and trying to get more people to a place wherever that place is. And it was true, I think, for this organization for many years, but particularly coming out of COVID when we had so many people here, we recognized that something had to change, and we have shifted our focus away from just straight up promotion. That more clearly isn't the answer. So we shifted our focus to try and cultivate more conscientious visitation, give people the tools to help them understand how they can take care of the place, and also just take them deeper into the Outer Banks to give them a greater appreciation of how it is so special. People are struck by the horizons and the natural setting right off the bat, but it takes, like I was saying before, the longer you're here, the more you come to realize how truly special it is and how many facets there are to that, such as having 95 plus active nonprofit organizations for a community of 40,000 people. So the longer you're here, the more you realize that it truly is a community, and you have a responsibility, you have a role in that community. I think part of what people don't necessarily um, understand when they come in, they feel it, but they don't know what it is just that the generosity and the what it feels like to be part of a community. But with that comes the responsibility to do what you can to take care of the place environmentally, but culturally as well.
And that's something that the Visitors Bureau champions called responsible tourism, correct? And I know you'll get into that, but is there anything you'd like to add as far as what that responsible tourism
Yeah,
means?
fix my answer, Jeff.
Okay. Let's get out the eraser. No, we're writing in pen here. There's no eraser. Really, responsible tourism in a nutshell is finding that balance
Hmm.
between the quality of life for residents in a destination and the quality of place for the visitors that visit. Lee made a great point. It is about responsibility. Whether you live here, whether you visit here, we all have that sense of responsibility to help take care of it. I think that for as far as our actions, if we take small actions, it'll have a really big impact over time.
Hmm.
And I think just, taking those actions, taking those steps to help protect and preserve a place so that it's around for future generations to enjoy, I think is at the heart of what responsible tourism is about.
There's a balance, there's a fine line. And it's when you think about a visitors bureau, you do think about the marketing and the tourism side and things that you look for when you're searching out a destination. And there is a shift where you see this aspect of voluntourism and responsible tourism. But that comes with challenges too, because there's also the aspect of having to change mindset and changing people's thoughts and ideas and behaviors before they arrive. So, what types of challenges do you guys see with responsible tourism? And what are some examples that you can give as far as what you guys have done to kind of tackle those head on and what's on the horizon?
So part of what believe responsible tourism means is recognizing and managing both the positive and the negative impacts of tourism. For too long, we only focused on the positive aspects of tourism, which were economic from our traditional perspective. The fact that it's a $2.15 billion industry that employs about 45% of our residents, and it provides tax relief of about $3,900 per Dare County resident. So we've always been able to be exclusive on the positive side of that, and not really dwell or consider too much the negative impacts. But I think the whole area of responsible tourism is that we've got to recognize those negative impacts, and So, as you mentioned, how do we condition people and set expectations before they get here? And I think that a big part of that is the messages that we share with them. And the good news is that people love it here. They love the Outer Banks, our visitors, our residents. Everybody loves it here. So then I think it's on our organization as well as businesses and local residents to help our visitors understand, give them the tools to recognize how special it is, all the different balances that are in place, all the hard work that's going on, and then give them instruction on how they can contribute to that, either connecting with a nonprofit that's here, volunteering as you mentioned, while their family or groups here, not walking on the dunes. We've intentionally tried to not make it finger waggy and just start off with a bunch of don't do this, don't do that, but rather try to tell the story of why those actions matter. Inform them,
Hmm.
give them the tools. They love it here, so let's utilize that and take advantage of it.
Yeah, I think a lot has to do with communication. If we can get that message out there again of what makes this place special and why it's important to protect and preserve it, I think residents and visitors have the best of intentions in mind. When you're on vacation, it's kind of like this liberating, whew, I can relax for a couple days or a week or a long weekend. Uh, and oftentimes you don't have those types of things top of mind. Uh,
Or you just don't know.
yeah, or you don't know whether it's safety related or uh, different places have different regulations, and sometimes you don't necessarily do the due diligence to study up on, hey, what is that center lane
Right.
really intended for? How do I navigate that? It's not really part of what your planning process is when you go to a new destination. So it's all about informing and educating and, like Lee said, not finger pointing. It's just making them aware of and showcasing, hey, this is unique to the Outer Banks, or this is special. And I think leading by example. I think residents can lead by example and help to showcase how we do it and welcome those who are new to the area and say, here's how we do it. Here's how, it would be great if you followed in our footsteps.
Right.
One specific example would be the fact that we have so many visitors coming in on Saturdays. Well, let our visitors know that a lot of the rental companies offer Friday check-ins and Sunday check-ins. Try to disperse those choke points and the negative impact on the community in that way. And another way that I think that we can help is help the person, the visitor, understand all the different things that are in their immediate neighborhood or area, so they don't necessarily have to hop in the car and choke up the roadways. So there are a bunch of things like that. There are some much bigger goals included within the LRTMP that are going to require a bunch of groups in addition to us working together to try and solve those huge problems. But yeah, it's all part of it.
I like the idea too of storytelling versus, the finger wagging that you mentioned. And an example that comes to mind is the recent Outer Edge series that you guys just did, which is very fascinating. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's on their website, and I'll link that in the episode description. But it's very interesting because it's not only the visitors that don't know some things, there's also a large part of the resident community that isn't aware of what goes into making the Outer Banks a special place and how much the resident population also plays into the longevity of the Outer Banks well-being. So it's really interesting that you do find that balance. And I don't know if that's an off the wall opinion, but looking at both sides of that coin, there is a balance, and it's just as important to make sure the residents understand the visitors' impact and the visitors understand the residents' impact, and working together.
Well, part of what we recognized in developing that series, I'm glad you had a chance to check it out and you enjoyed it. outerbanks.org/edge. Yeah, all 6 episodes. Uh, it was it was intentional that we told the story of the Outer Banks through the 23 different locals that were interviewed. Their passions and their connections to the place come across real strongly. One of the things that that we've recognized both with the LRTMP, but also within that video series is that really, I think for harmony, as you mentioned before, to happen, we have to realize that the similarities between visitors and residents, we come together in celebrating the Outer Banks. I mean, that's the area where we're all the same. We have different time invested into that and different ways of expressing those connections. But I think it's important that I mean, this may sound overstated, but I think what we're really trying to do is change the culture of tourism on the Outer Banks. And what that means is that we can shape what tourism is to this community and how we engage with visitors and how we use the power of tourism for good in our community. We're small enough to be able to pull that off, but we truly want tourism to be something that happens with the local community instead of something that happens to it. And so that video series was a really big step in that direction, I think. And it's the first time that we've ever had a series of local premieres where we invited the locals to see the work that we had done before we shared it with visitors. And it was really important because it was an expression of the community. So I think that's an example of how we've rethought the way that we go about our business and the impact that we're trying to make uh, with the community instead of to the community.
There was such a sense of pride. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
you know, guests that saw the premieres and just walking out through the theater on their way out. I think that was the word that kind of resonated the most was pride. Pride for where they live, uh, pride for where they get to spend their
Right.
life and their day, uh, and pride really just to dig deeper into neighbors and fellow members of the community that they may not have known or known about.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, because again, we're blessed with the natural beauty of the Outer
Mm-hmm.
Banks, but we're also blessed with the quirkiness and the beauty of the people that make it what it is.
Right.
So yeah, pride was probably the word that stood out when people saw it for the first time, and we were very intentional about introducing this series to our local population before a wider visitor audience. So it was cool to see, yeah, the reaction afterwards.
And with the storytelling, it kind of goes in hand with what you were saying about changing the culture of tourism. And you've mentioned it a couple of times with the acronym, and my PIO brain
Oh,
is
sorry.
like quaking here. So I'm
The
going to let you introduce what the LRTMP is.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, you're
Uh,
fine.
the Long Range Tourism Management Plan, the LRTMP. So it's essentially a 10-year roadmap for managing both the positive and negative impacts of tourism. Um, uh, and it's got four main goals, and Jeff will help me out with this. But the first and foremost, like we've been talking about, is to essentially close the gap between residents and visitors to connect tourism with the people that live here. One goal involves coordinating the development uh, to be more sustainable, environmentally sustainable. One is to consider development with regard to the vitality of the community, and basically let's make sure that as we grow responsibly that we don't end up destroying the things that make the area so special, which is kind of a tricky thing when you start really getting into it because everybody will tell you to a person like we don't want to change the Outer Banks. We don't want the Outer Banks to change, and not coincidentally, they many of them perceive tourism as the greatest threat to making that happen. So everybody says we all agree, don't change. Part of the LRTMP is as an exercise or as a community to hopefully recognize the things that make us special and don't just open up the gates and develop in a way that destroys that. And then the final, what's the final? Oh, the final point perhaps the smallest, easiest to solve goal is to provide a diversity of affordable housing for the Outer Banks. I'm kidding. That's the hardest one. It is one of the goals in the LRTMP, but it's so a diversity of housing,
Hmm.
basically making sure that people can afford to live out here.
Hmm. And we do have the Dare County Housing
Housing.
Task Force. So,
Jeff sits on that.
yep,
Yeah,
yep.
in fact, I think between our staff, our tourism board, and our long-range planning committee, we've got 7 or 8 representatives on that committee.
And that's a great illustration of how involved the community is with, the planning of the long range tourism management plan. And I say planning, but the planning part has occurred. So what kind of led up to that? I know you touched on the goals, but what inspired that and how did the wheels get to turning on that movement?
We we had been we'd been aware of the gap between residents and the tourism industry for a long time, and it's not unique to us. It's every popular tourism destination in the world practically. And so there was some thought given to, hey, we should do a resident survey. We should try to understand where the residents are at and how we can start to break this down and pull the two closer together. Meanwhile, right about the time we launched that, COVID happened, and we pumped the brakes because, obviously trying to do some kind of resident survey when everybody was terrified and it was not going to be meaningful. Coming out of COVID, then we had an explosion of business, and it really gave greater urgency and highlighted the absolute need to plan for get a long range plan. We think in terms of 2 years, 3 years, but it's incredibly rare that you have the opportunity to think 10 years or even further. So coming out of COVID, we knew that something had to change. More was not the answer. So we hired a consultant group that specializes in these types of long range plans. We had interviews, stakeholder interviews. We had focus groups. We put out an online survey that had over 4,500 responses. We had a couple of town hall meetings when the draft was available, and we brought the community together and presented that and got their input. From that point, one of the recommendations of the LRTMP was to have the tourism board appoint a special committee, which it did to try and bring that big plan to life. That group's been working hard over the last year and a half almost. Jeff leads that group, working with a tourism board appointed chair. So they've made great progress.
Mhm.
It's quite an endeavor, of course. Um, there were some other recommendations that were in the LRTMP, such as, well, hiring Jeff, hiring, it didn't say specifically hire Jeff, it said hire a community engagement manager. And man, what an incredible recommendation that was. And Jeff's really done a tremendous job with it. But if you want to close the gap between residents and the industry, then having a person who's devoted to that responsibility of communicating and connecting with the public
Mhm.
is just it's essential. I can't believe that we didn't have it before. Now looking back, another recommendation within the plan was to create a tourism pledge, which is the Outer Banks Promise. I think you had
Mhm.
noted that in your
Yep.
preliminary preparation for us. But
Yep.
yeah, and perhaps Jeff could speak more to that.
Yeah.
Sure. Uh, and just stepping back for a quick
Yeah.
second, with the long-range plan, it like Lee said, it's a beast. It's a lot to tackle. Uh, so we're trying to stress a sense of urgency to tackle it, but also, go about it with a sense of patience too. It's not going to
Mhm.
happen overnight. It's a 10-year plan for a reason. Uh, there are a few, in going through the uh, development of the plan, it was understood that the Bureau and the Tourism Board doesn't own all the assets to make all the changes that are recommended in the plan.
Mhm.
So there are four distinct uh, kind of ways that we can go about it. One is to lead different initiatives. One is to convene groups together that are already doing great work in the community. One is to support the efforts that they're doing. And the last one is to advocate for some of the change that's recommended in the plan. So, uh, it's a beast. Uh,
Mhm.
as Lee said,
Housing is a great example of that. For instance, there was already a task force that existed, so it didn't make sense for the special committee to try and duplicate or, uh, you know, undermine those efforts or dilute the
Mhm.
effort. So in that case, we're advocating for their recommendations and trying to support them as best we can.
yeah, and there are other groups and organizations out there that are doing great work involved in the topics that are embedded within the plan already. So, trying to connect with those groups, trying to
Mhm.
understand what they're doing, try to showcase what the long range plan committee is working on, and how can we collaborate? How can we connect the dots? How can we find the gaps that exist between what they're trying to do, what they need, and maybe how the long range committee can help step in and maybe fill some of those gaps or provide some additional input. So it's been a really interesting process so far, and it's a 10-year roadmap. We're kind of just the beginning stages of it, but
Mhm.
it's exciting to see what we've been working on so far, which is a great segue into the Outer Banks Promise.
Yeah, and if I can, actually, I do want to ask one question in case people aren't aware. So, as I introduced the episode, I said we were chatting with the Outer Banks Visitors Bureau, but you also mentioned the tourism board. So, for people who aren't familiar, can you just give a little Reader's Digest version of how those two things are different?
Sure. So our organization was created through state law, which is one thing that some folks are not don't understand. We're technically a public authority created through state law. So many people think that we're a division of Dare County government. We are not. We're a standalone entity. We are closely related, of course, with the county. So in that legislation, it gave the commissioners the ability to enact a tax, and which is why we focus on Dare County. By the way, we do partner with the other counties, but our focus is on Dare County because in the legislation, it's a Dare County tax that funds us. So also within the legislation, it said, commissioners, you can enact this tax, but to do that, you need to create a Dare County Tourism Board. That tourism board will be 13 members. Of those 13 members, you'll have one representative from each of the 6 towns. You'll have one representative from the Dare County Commissioners. You'll have one from the Chamber of Commerce, one from the Restaurant Association, one from the Hotel Motel Association, one from the Association of Realtors, and 2 at-larges, of which one must be from Hatteras Island. I don't know if anybody was counting those. Hopefully, I didn't leave anybody out. I think I was pretty close to
I
13,
think
though.
you got it.
So the Dare County Tourism Board is uh, literally that. It's the board of directors. I report to the board of directors as the executive director. I manage the staff of the Outer Banks Visitors Bureau. We have 11 full-time employees, about 20 or so part-time employees that man the 4 welcome centers that we have in our county. It's really the Dare County Tourism Board doing business as the Outer Banks Visitors Bureau. We're one and the same organization, but in essence, the tourism board is the board of directors, and the visitors bureau is sort of like the public storefront for the organization.
I gotcha. Clear as mud. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, I thought it would be good because some people aren't aware. Quite
It's a
honestly,
great question.
I didn't even think about that as one of the preparation materials. So thank you for that great explanation. It was very thorough. And
Sometimes I just say we're the DCTB, DBA, OBVB.
we love alphabet soup
Yeah,
here.
You got it.
Great. So let's jump back in here to the Outer Banks Promise. And Jeff, I'm going to let you take the reins on this one. This one has been really exciting to see unfold. So what is the Outer Banks Promise?
Yes, the Outer Banks Promise is a destination pledge that's designed to inspire better stewardship and more responsible behavior. We've talked a lot about that already. Uh, we've worked, gosh, for months trying to figure out what are the elements of the promise that we really want to bring forward, and had some really great discussions and wrote the promise, rewrote it again. Uh, we've got 7 key promise points uh, that if you visit obxpromise.com, you can dig into those a little bit more, as well as a 1-minute video. But essentially, it's, as we talked about a few minutes ago, it's what are the small steps that residents and visitors can take to help protect and preserve this place. Uh, we kind of leave it. The 7 lines are specific, but they're also general enough that people can interpret them in their own way.
Hmm.
Uh, People can also go to obxpromise.com, and there's an open-ended field for people to make their own promise and interpret it how they feel. How can they better protect the Outer Banks for the future? So it's been exciting to see. It's been really well received in the community. Similar to the Outer Edge, we decided to launch it within the community first before launching it to a wider visitor audience. And the conversations that we have been super positive. I think people get why we're doing it. We've engaged with a lot of local organizations, companies to collectively make the promise. So certainly we want people individually to go on and make the promise and learn more about it. But by going out and engaging with community partners, organizations, businesses, it allows us the opportunity to explain what we're doing and why we're doing it, but also gives them the tools, as Lee mentioned earlier, gives them the tools to then amplify that message to visitors that they come in contact with, guests. It really just helps spread the word about those small actions that people can take.
And it's a lot of creating that buy-in, right? Like this is somewhere where people are very passionate about coming to, and they care about our environment, and using that storytelling to leverage the buy-in.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the video that we created, we worked with a local cinematographer who did an incredible job working with basically neighbors and friends, people, community members that you see day to day, and they had a great opportunity to talk about what the promise means to them and kind of align with what they do on a day-to-day basis. And it's been really positive, I think, from the standpoint of the storytelling. I don't think it's much of a sell. When I'm out there talking about the promise, or anyone's talking about the promise, as we mentioned earlier, people love this place. They want to see it protected and preserved for the future. What are the small steps that we can take to do that?
I know there are 7. Just curious, what are the ones, or one which resonates with you the most?
Gosh, they all do.
If you were to pick one.
If I were to pick one, I would say, I would start with the first one. Discover this land of history and inspiration with a spirit of kindness and appreciation. This place is blessed with history and culture.
Jeff. That was good.
You want to rattle off the other 6?
You know what? Why not?
I can probably do it. You put me on the spot here, but I think that one, we started with that one, because I think the kindness and appreciation piece, one of the things, especially during the pandemic, and the stresses that put on our local community, I think whether it's then or now or in the future, a little reminder of being kind and respectful can go a long way. It doesn't hurt. And again, this pledge, and we're not the first destination to create a destination pledge. We're inspired by other organizations around the country, around the world that have done this. In fact, a community member brought this to our attention. She visited Sedona, Arizona, and discovered that, wow, they have a pledge out here. We should consider doing something similar. So that was really helpful to have that feedback, and it kind of grew its own legs, and here we are. But I think from the standpoint of kindness and appreciation, it starts with that. Another one that resonates with me is support local. Small acts have big impacts. The Outer Banks is really fortunate to have so many small, locally owned businesses, family-owned businesses. I think when people come here and experience those restaurants, retail shops, etc., the fact that it just it's another way that we're different and special and unique from other places.
It's an important part of the culture.
Yeah. But we were inspired, the National Park Service, pack it in, pack it out, leave no trace, wander with wonder, not steering away from pathways, not walking on the dunes.
Be a wildlife star, observing wildlife from afar.
Yeah.
The wander with wonder is sticking to paths and trails is an important one. Just an example of folks not knowing.
I really like the first one that you said. I feel like that one's very I feel like that was the one that I liked a lot because we do have so much history here, but also the kindness and appreciation that doesn't just pertain to people.
And that was a great way to weave. And we didn't want this to be, 20 points in the promise trying to consolidate, but that was a good way to merge that kindness and appreciation piece with what they're experiencing, the history, the culture, land of inspiration, land of, of firsts, so many firsts
land
here.
Of beginnings.
Yeah.
Turn what ifs into let's prepare. Actually, I changed my answer as a PIO because so much of what we do is preparing. What else? Love the beach, respect the ocean. That's a huge one. Yeah, those are the 7. But what was yours?
Mine was the support local businesses.
Support local.
Small actions have big impacts.
Yeah, I think just kind of embedded in all of this is kindness, responsibility, respect, and safety. And those are the 4 things that kind of came to the forefront. So it's like, all right, how can we create a promise? How can we create a pledge that weaves all those in? So
it's basically having a sense of personal responsibility.
So if someone were to want to make this pledge, what do you guys do to get that word out? And we talked about, conditioning behaviors before people arrive here. But for anybody that's listening to this podcast, if they want to make the pledge, what would they need to do? How would they do that?
Well, you can start by going to obxpromise.com. But as far as marketing and promoting, on that site, obviously we have a form where they can fill out. It literally takes just a couple seconds to put their name, email address. It gives them a chance to dive deeper into what the promise means. Maybe take a look. The video is 1 minute, so kind of digging into that a little bit. The 30 or so businesses and organizations that have stepped forward to collectively make the promise are all listed on there. There's additional links to dive deeper into how people can take those actions and steps. So yeah, it's a great resource. As far as marketing and communicating this to the world, obviously it's on our website. We created the video. It's been a focus of some of our social media campaigns recently.
Yeah, it's actually been great for social because we've taken each one of the points and kind of launched a post or a series of posts off of it, just to kind of bring it to life. And it's been an easy, but one of the things that surprised us, we didn't know how this was going to resonate with visitors when we started putting these messages out as posts. And what we found, though, was they were some of our most engaged posts and some of the most popular ones. So it was clear early on that we had hit on something. It was resonating with visitors.
We've included in our travel guide. We have a 2-page spread in our travel guide this year. We've activated our welcome centers. The welcome centers are, in a lot of ways, the first entry point into the destination. So we've got some swag that we give out. We've got information. We went around and made sure and did a kind of an educational session with all of our welcome center employees, just so they could, again, help amplify that message when someone comes in, really be the ambassadors out there talking to visitors as they come in. But yeah, it's been woven into some of our advertising. And really, honestly, the community partnerships have really been special. Not just the 30 that that have collectively made the promise, but reaching out to some of the municipalities to help share it in their, their monthly newsletters like you have, Kay. And we appreciate that. Having some of our vacation rental management companies link to it. We've had a vacation rental management company, property management company, create T-shirts for their frontline staff to wear that has their specific promise, a really cool design, so that they can be ambassadors while they're out talking to guests and visitors throughout the course of the year. So it's been really fun to watch how community and industry partners have kind of put their own spin on it and kind of trying to outdo one another to help us out. That's been inspiring. It's been great.
That's awesome that you have so much support from visitors and the community. I mean, I feel like this is something that starts so strongly at home, even though there's a big emphasis on the visitor culture, but it's important for residents. I know we talked about it a little bit earlier, but they're a big piece of it too. And I've mentioned several times conditioning the behavior before visitors arrive, but therein also lies a challenge of conditioning residents to see things differently and to have that appreciation. And one of the videos, the Outer Edge videos that's coming to mind right now is the one about fishing. And I just remember when we watched it at the tourism summit at Pioneer, when they were getting the oysters out of the sound. And it's something that I don't want to say I took it for granted, but I guess I never realized like there's so much that goes into it. And not even just the work part of it, but the passion and the heart and the dedication that you have to have, and the science. The science of it was fascinating. I don't want to spoil anything. You'll have to go watch it yourselves. So the Outer Banks Promise is something that, would you say that it kind of spun off of the long range tourism management plan?
For sure. Yeah. It was one of the recommendations in there to create a destination pledge. So we did our research. We kind of took a look out there and what other destinations were doing, but we really wanted to put our own stamp on it. And even from the not using the word pledge and using the word promise, that was talked about and discussed in one of our LRTMP committee meetings, and really great suggestion. Just again, we're different here on the Outer Banks. We're unique. We're quirky. So let's do something a little bit different here.
Yeah. And you mentioned, I'm going to kind of segue into looking more into the future here, but with using social media to leverage some of these campaigns, and looking at the way that technology kind of comes into play with, AI and all of the, the images and things like that. Do you see that as a challenge with promoting this place as a destination?
I see it more as an opportunity, really. We've integrated an AI tool on our website recently, and it's great at helping people get beyond just the top tier attractions and really put together an itinerary that people come in knowing something about the destination, or we want them to find what they're looking for as quickly as possible. But the paradox is we want them to stick around on the website too and learn more. So AI it gives them the tool to kind of self-lead their discovery of the place.
Now, how does that play into looking at the responsible tourism aspect? So when I'm assuming, and I apologize, I don't know, is it kind of like a chatbot type thing where you can ask it to prepare an itinerary, or can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I think that the chatbots and kind of upping that was a place where a lot of the destinations were in the early start on integrating AI. The product that we found, however, has a really strong visual component to it. So, and visuals are so important with learning about a destination or learning about particular neighborhoods or areas, understanding what makes Rodanthe different from Avon, for instance. So I think AI, just because it's pulling from these large language models and being informed by our website, though, as well, it's able to give visitors a deeper understanding, and you can just kind of self-lead your approach to it. So it's the other thing about AI in particular is people are used to typing in queries for search engines, but this is a different thing. You can type in a paragraph that's really specific about what your needs are, what you enjoy, who you're traveling with, when you're traveling. You can do all that in one thing, and a search engine would choke on it. It wouldn't know what to give you. But AI just gives you a really robust itinerary, for instance, or a very complete answer, and then you can it works generatively, so you keep asking questions and refining it, and just go deeper and deeper. It's awesome. It's changing things dramatically.
And to be clear, this is something that's currently live on your website now.
Yes.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
And do you access that from the home landing page, or is there a specific URL for it?
On the home page, there's a little slider on the side that that basically just encourages you to ask us anything.
Neat.
But we'll be integrating it into the website in different ways as well. You can provide the prompts. People don't know how to use AI right now, so there's a little bit of hesitation. So we can set up the prompts in different ways to kind of get them going.
From the AI standpoint, Lee covered it. I think, social obviously is a huge piece of our marketing. And, when you look at some other responsible tourism posts that we've created. And, you look at accessibility, a recent post on accessibility, we just created a mini guide on accessibility, and that's a key piece of the LRTMP. It's just, again, another way that we can educate our visitors about some of the resources that we have here, what they can expect when they get here. But really, social is such a great way to not just push information out, but also generate that conversation. We've seen that with some of the promise posts that we have too, where we kind of leave it open-ended of, what promise do you make or would you make? So yeah, just looking at some of those responses and engagement's been fun.
Another technological example is we were able to track GPS, we're able to track phones, so we can see where and when people are clustering in particular areas, and we can market to them to kind of spread those crowds out so they aren't just all choking in one place.
And when you're talking about kind of clustering, are you talking about as far as locations or different attractions or finding that? Okay, that's really neat. I'm play with that.
Yeah, and I know like Southern Shores, for instance, has done traffic studies and stuff like that are based on the GPS as well.
Oh, I know Town of Ducks, we've got our fair share of traffic studies.
Oh, yeah.
So neat. Well, is there anything before we start wrapping up that you wanted to interject anywhere? Did we skip over anything?
We haven't really talked about the grant programs, which have been sort of one of the things that we've traditionally been able to utilize to support the community with. So aside from just a $2.15 billion industry and all that, we're really proud of the grant programs that we have, both for tourism infrastructure essentially, but also for event grants. And the only entities that are eligible for those are Dare County municipal governments, such as Duck, or local nonprofits. So over the years, we've been able to reinvest over $22 million. I think it's more like $25 million now. 700 plus different applications, and I think more than 150 different entities awarded. So we're extremely proud of that, and it's been a great program. I know that, and it really kind of connects in a lot of different ways. Like Duck recently completed, they've done pedestrian improvements, they've done stormwater and drainage improvements. So these dollars and stepping back tourism allows us to kind of reinvest and actually enhance some of the things that are, so it's not all traffic. There's some good aspects to it too that we certainly want to continue.
There are, and I would be remiss if I didn't thank you guys for your support of the Duck Jazz Festival. We recently were awarded a grant for that as well. And you mentioned the event grants, and those event grants, they're specifically for off-season shoulder events too, correct?
They are.
So you're looking at that balance of, tourism during the summer season, but also looking how to help the economy and the local community within those shoulder season times.
The legislation that I mentioned specifically says that we are to give particular emphasis on the less than peak months. And it makes sense, really. I mean, it doesn't do anybody any good to try and cram more people into summer. We certainly want to make sure that people show up in summer at 70% of our annual business, but most all of our energy and investment marketing wise goes towards shoulder and off season.
And this year you guys had, was it the most number of event applications that you had? I thought is what Councilmember Chasen had told me.
Yes.
Yes. So that's great. That's great.
Been a victim of our own success. The word's gotten out. And we've also been working a lot with local nonprofits in a variety of ways beyond the event grant programs now. And I think some of that improved relationship has led more nonprofits to apply for those grant programs. It's a great problem to have. And we've increased the line item as a result.
Yeah, and just to add, our involvement and our partnerships with our nonprofits locally has really grown. In conjunction with the Community Foundation, we co-host 2 events a year, our Mission Mixer and our Knowledge Series events. We've really stepped up. A couple of years ago, we created a nonprofit directory on outerbanks.org. Actually, if you go to outerbanks.org/voluntourism, we've got a nonprofit directory with 96 local nonprofits listed. And through that directory, we also talk about our volunteerism initiatives, which essentially is trying to connect visitors with the great work that nonprofits are doing. We all know that nonprofits could always use, whether it's dollars, a helping hand. This really, again, with the goal of trying to bridge that gap between residents, visitors, and the industry, really gives a great opportunity for visitors to come in here and truly leave the place better than they found it. We've got, I think, about 40 or 45 of the nonprofits that offer volunteer opportunities. So certainly another way that, again, we're helping to bridge that gap, but also leverage the partnerships and grow the partnerships within the community that we already have.
And have you seen a large number of visitors volunteer as a result of that? What's the effect? And this isn't a trick question. It's just me being curious. Have you seen a lot of people start to volunteer more?
Yeah, I think, as far as the actual numbers, we're kind of more of a pass-through as far as giving that promotional energy to those nonprofits, as opposed to like gatekeeping how many volunteers versus locals they have. But we are driving eyeballs to those nonprofits and those opportunities. Some nonprofits simply don't have opportunities for visitors to participate, whether it's just the nature of what they do, or maybe the training requirements for someone to volunteer. But we've certainly found some really great partners that have some interesting opportunities. Again, if you're here for a week, you're here for a couple of days, spend a few hours and kind of get to know those nonprofits a little bit more, dig a little bit deeper.
Right.
I think it is a growing trend, though.
Yeah.
And in fact, we're hearing about more families that are coming in and asking, what project can we do while we're here? I know Bill Coleman at SPCA, they have families that come every year and just come to walk the dogs and do that, which is great. We also help motor coach buses and group tour planners, and quite often they'll ask, hey, is there a project that our group can get involved with?
That's awesome. That's great. I know Town of Nags Head just had a huge group. I saw on their Facebook page, and even in Duck, we have this one family specifically. I think this year they're bringing 30 some people. So we're like, okay, what can we have them do? I mean, there's always an opportunity, but it's great that people are looking for a way to give back to a place that gives them so much too.
Sure. Yeah. And it's one of those things, kind of like the long range plan, where it's a slow build. It's not like a sprint.
Right.
So we started off with, I guess, like a handful of those nonprofits that had volunteer opportunities, and now we're up to around 45 or so. And so I think that'll continue to grow. And I think that it does take it can be a little challenging to figure out, okay, we've got these 100,000 new guests coming in for a week. How can I train them and get them to help? But I think there are other opportunities, like the non-resident property owners who visit frequently. If we can train them one time, then because they are coming back repeatedly, they can volunteer and make a real impact, and it lightens the operational challenge on the nonprofit. So where there's a will, there's a way.
Right. And that awareness is important, because some people might not know that the Outer Banks has resources for things, like I'm just spitballing here, domestic violence or rehabilitation services, and the SPCA and all these different nonprofits that assist in different sections of the community. So people might find something that resonates really, truly with them and want to come to Dare County even more, because they see the efforts being put forth by that organization and by you guys for leveraging their presence.
We were trying to figure out how we could use the power of tourism to do more tangible good in the community beyond just the big numbers. And it occurred to us that, hey, the grant programs that we have are great, but still it's about money. What if we just directly connect the visitors, which is the base of our business, directly with the nonprofits, and kind of step out of the way? The visitors come away with a deeper experience and at the very least, a greater understanding of all that's going into making this place what it is. So it's kind of a no-brainer. It didn't cost us hardly anything, and yet we've been able to improve the relationships with the nonprofits, do more good in the community, and give the visitors a better experience. It's just an example of how we're nimble enough as a community to rethink the way that we do things to have a more positive impact. That's exciting.
It is. And I really have enjoyed this conversation, and I feel like some of the questions I've kind of asked out of my own curiosity. So thanks for bearing with me here. But looking at how much everything is interwoven here to create this wonderful Outer Banks community, if you were to reflect on not just our entire conversation, but everything that you guys do for Dare County, what's one piece of advice you would give to someone who's maybe coming here for the first time, or even who's returning? What's something that you would share with them to maybe change their perspective a little bit and kind of see the Outer Banks in a different light?
I would say that you get out what you put in. And the incredible thing about this place, in my opinion, is just how tightly knit the community is, how generous it is. So if you come in and you get engaged in that community and you contribute to it, you'll be rewarded many times over.
Good answer.
Yeah, I'd say mine would be leave it better than you found it. So much of what we talked about protecting, preserving, there's so many ways that you can do that and take those small steps and be mindful while you're here. I'd say that's probably the biggest piece of advice or biggest takeaway is just, leave it better than you found it.
What about you, Kay? What advice would you give?
I think I would tell people, take it all in for what it is. It's not going to be your typical beach town. And some people love that. Some people get frustrated by it. They don't like that they can't go to their favorite fast food chain. But we have a dozen other places that are better, in my opinion, that they can visit. And one thing we get a lot, what else is there to do besides the beach? There's so much to do. And go enjoy the beach, but also don't be afraid to venture out. But also it's okay to do nothing. When you're here, just take it in. And it's okay to slow down. And that's something that I have to remind myself as well. Life doesn't have to be a 3-ring circus, but take it in for what it's worth.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
So
there's plenty to do here, but sometimes it's also okay to do nothing and just
absolutely nothing wrong.
Unplug and
exactly
be mindful.
Exactly. Well, are there any closing thoughts or anything you'd like to add before we wrap up here?
No, I just appreciate the time. Appreciate the opportunity to, again, talk about what we do here and why we do it. Again, so much of my role as a community engagement manager is to go out within the community and do exactly just that. Provide updates, provide the why behind what we're doing, but also to try to have those meaningful conversations, whether it's about a specific action that they want to see, someone in the community wants us to do or look into. But really it's about providing that feedback loop. We don't have all the answers as it relates to the LRTMP. There's so much to dig into. So we're going to continue to engage with the community members, try to get feedback, try to get ideas and input into that. So yeah, please give us those ideas, and when we're out and about, definitely provide that feedback to us. We need it.
I just say thank you, Kay.
Yeah, thank you,
Town
guys.
of Duck, for having the conversation, and as Jeff was saying, we want to hear from you. We appreciate having people involved in what we're doing or asking us questions if they just don't understand where we're coming from. We're happy to sit down and talk through it.
And that's probably been one of my favorite parts about doing this podcast, is making people in local government and just various organizations more accessible to kind of break that barrier down. So hopefully, people will hear this and, want to reach out and have that conversation, even if it's going to the website and playing with the little AI and making their promise. And I'll include all of that information. But if people want to visit your website, would you like to share the URL? I'm sure it's very difficult.
outerbanks.org.
So I'll have that in the description as well. But thank you both so much. This has been incredibly insightful. And I think it would be actually really interesting to kind of revisit this maybe every year as we head into the season to kind of, earmark and see what's on the horizon and how things have changed. I don't know.
Let's do it.
Just an idea.
Sounds good.
Thank you for listening to the Sitting Duck podcast. Make sure you like this episode, subscribe, and share it on your social media so more people know about it. And for the latest on what's happening in the town of Duck, visit ducknc.gov.